Hello everyone, today we're going to have a little bit of fun and we're going to be talking about Star Trek. So I've got my captain's uniform on and we're going to be reviewing Star Trek and the Orville, but from a Starseed perspective. So, as some of you may well know, some of you might not know, but Star Trek in general, and what they call Star Trek canon means the rules or the law of Star Trek, it's basically a mirror. I've got to turn my sound off, don't I? Because this happens to me sometimes. Turn my sound off. That sound there. Right. Okay, so Star Trek is basically a metaphor for the Starseed phenomena. Now, what do I mean by that? Basically, Gene Roddenberry, apparently, when he wrote or was inspired to write Star Trek, the original series, you know, with Captain Kirk and Spock, I don't know if how much of this is true, but something would have happened. He would have got some inspiration about the truth that happens galactically in the universe, basically about the original story of the creation of humanity and our angels or our guides, which are Pleiadians and Sirians. So I know for some of you, it might be like, wow, you know, like back the truck up. That's just too much information. I can't handle it. But it is true that there's about 150 million or so starseeds on Earth that are their souls are Sirians or Pleiadians, and that we learn through a process that we're galactic and that we're 15 billion years old from the beginning of creation, and that we are the originators of the universe and where a lot of the myths and legends come from. So you know about myths and legends. I mean, there's lots of Sirians in ancient Egypt. If you watch Stargate or Stargate Atlantis, the very original Stargate gave you the idea of gods, ancient gods, you know, visiting Earth in ancient Egypt and Sumeria and so forth. So it's a real accurate history or phenomenon, and Star Trek is alluding to that truth, and that's why it makes people so very, very excited. So there's two main reasons for Star Trek. One, it's alluding to the historical truth of the evolution or the species of humans and reptilians and other various different races throughout the galaxy for 15 billion years, and various galactic wars that have caused starseeds, Sirians and Pleiadians to escape from wars with the reptilians, and that's been played out in the battle between the humans and the Klingons. So basically the Klingons are the reptilians and the humans are the humans, or the Pleiadians and Sirians. Now, the other part of the story is it's just a nice, pretty way to teach people two things primarily. One, about morality, obviously. And the second thing, it's also preparing for what they call first contact. And so you say, well, we've been preparing for a long time, you know. This goes back to the 1960s, and we haven't had UFOs arrive on the front lawn of the White House yet. And if at all, will it ever happen? And I believe something like that will happen one day, although I cannot say. So those are the two reasons for Star Trek. Now, a little bit of history. Gene Roddenberry apparently went to a channeled evening with a small group of people, and he heard this true message about the origins of humanity and this battle with these reptilian races, and about Pleiades or Sirius, or I don't know if he knew about Pleiadians or Sirians, but he heard that somewhere, and then he was inspired to write Star Trek. And my opinion that the original series is actually closer to the historical accuracy, that idea about humans battling Klingons. This paints that story, I think, even more accurately than the more recent versions of Star Trek. Now, I won't go into it too much because it's too long and you know, blah, you know. But Lucille Ball in Desi Arnaz, she did some funding and she helped rescue Star Trek from the you know, script, you know, and the floor, and she poured some money into, or she helped, or whatever. So Lucille Ball from I Love Lucy is involved in the beginning of Star Trek. Okay, moving right along. The first series is really, really wonderful. Everybody who's grown up through the 60s knows it. Very powerful, and lots of morality, lots of life lessons, and it really, really helped people through the 60s with their morality and ethics. And then the next series, which is actually my all-time favourite series, is called TNG, or The Next Generation, with Jean-Luc Picard, played by Patrick Stewart. Now, why is Next Generation my favourite? I would say generally because Patrick Stewart was a bit of a Shakespearean actor with the Royal Shakespeare Company in England, and he had a lot of I've got to turn my battery on. You know, my battery's running low, so we have a Star Trek technical science problem. I have to turn my battery on, so give me a millisecond. Excuse me, my dilithium crystals were getting low. Am I turned on? Yeah, I'm great. Good to go. Right. I fixed my dilithium crystal problem. Right, okay. So, why do I like Star Trek: The Next Generation? I think because of Patrick Stewart and the caliber that he brought to the team, with Brandon Braga and Jerry Ryan and all those guys and the executive teams. He just brought a higher quality, a higher caliber. He kind of moved it up to a higher level of really good quality acting. So if you look at the stories, and particularly his acting and all the rest of the team, it does a beautiful job. And I also feel, oh, thank you, I'm sure for that. I also feel that Commander Data was a beautiful introduction, and some of the wranglings or the ethical debates about morality that Captain Jean-Luc Picard and Commander Data had was really, really beautiful. It dealt with lots of issues of freedom and human rights. Although it was dealing with the issues of robots, that didn't matter. It was the debates they got into and the ethics, and it took Star Trek up to a higher caliber. It was just a huge jump. So it's really, really great. Also, Dr. Wesley Crusher. Sorry, is it? No. I'm getting confused now. What's the name? Wesley Crusher had a really, really interesting incident with a being called the Traveller, which talked about quantum physics and other different things, which I won't go into because it's just too long and drawn out. And then we had Deep Space Nine. Now, the reason I like Deep Space Nine, particularly because it dealt a lot more with politics, because they weren't flying in a ship; they were based on a base, and my best actor would go to Commander Kira Nerys. So Kira Nerys was a woman. That woman there, no, not that woman there. So she's not on the set on the cover, but she did some really, really good acting, and I'll talk about that later on. And then Star Trek Voyager with the first female captain. She played that role really, really beautiful. That took it up another notch in terms of the show's pizzazz and what have you, and it's also very, very good. Voyager was very good indeed. Star Trek Enterprise was just a complete blowout. They just really, really did badly with this actor who was in Quantum Leap. Is just shoddy. It got so bad that in the third or fourth episode, they did an episode where they were tied up as prisoners and they both got naked and with glossy sort of blue lights on their skin. I think they were just desperate for ratings, and it just dived. And I think they did two, maybe three seasons. It was bad. What else have I got here? Then after Star Trek Enterprise came Star Trek Discovery, which was also a complete flop. Everybody hated it because they had a woman as the captain who was called Michael, which is ridiculous. They also have Michelle Yeoh, a Chinese actress that was very authoritarian, and it was just crazy. And they got into lots of woke politics around homosexuality and transgenderism and lots of other issues that just went so left-wing, and it just took a dive, and everybody hated Discovery. It kind of improved a little bit later, and they used Commander Pike, and he was a real handsome actor, as you may well know, and so Commander Pike kind of did a reboot, going back in the Star Trek timeline to the origin, and he did a series called Strange New Worlds. So Commander Pike existed before Captain Kirk, and Strange New Worlds is actually very successful. They did a reboot on The Next Generation. They brought back Jean-Luc Picard because everybody just loved Patrick Stewart so much, but he came back as an elderly captain who was part of a group of renegades, and that kind of also dived. Well, did it or didn't it? But anyway, Picard's not very good, but it kind of has some genuine moments of Star Trek, Next Generation. And then I really, really want to talk about the ORVILLE, because the ORVILLE is just majestic. I'll talk more about the ORVILLE later on, but the ORVILLE, in my opinion, it's not in the Star Trek canon or story, but it's a remake by some fans, from Star Trek fans like Seth MacFarlane, and it's just got the stamp of our angels and our Palladians and Sirians on it. It's got the highest vibration of love and beauty in the Star Trek style, and it's totally fan based. As you know, Seth MacFarlane did Family Guy and other different things. Anyway, so the ORVILLE is actually superior to all of the Star Treks, in my opinion. It's just better by far in so many ways. Even the very, very recent episodes. Season 3, episode 7 and 8 deals with transgender reassignment surgery and other different things, very, very emotional. Also, there was a beautiful Season 3, episode 3, brought in a blue alien called Denal, who put them through some tests and gave them a speech. And this speech was just literally like the presence of Palladians or Sirians were on the TV talking to us. It was just really, really, really good. So just continue to watch the ORVILLE, and if we can say, dear God, bless me in the name of whatever, blah-de-blah, please help the executives sort out their crap and bring in season 4. There needs to be 8 seasons of the ORVILLE at least. It's just a work of majestic wonderment. So enough of that. I'll put my glasses on and go into some of my debates about Star Trek and where it works and where it doesn't. And I can't talk to Jerry Ryan or Brandon Braga or whoever those guys are and advise them, because I'm not part of their advising team, but I would love to, because I feel through my teachings and what I know is that I know more about the original story that it's alluding to than I think their actual team knows, because I'm a Starseed coach, spiritual enlightenment teacher. I work closely with Mother Mary and I channel her publicly, and I've had a Palladian teacher channel through automatic writing for 25 years, so I think I know more about the original history of what Star Trek is based upon. So anyway, I'm going to talk about the ideas of Star Trek, and then I'm going to talk about the science in Star Trek, and then I'm going to talk about the parallel truths, and then I'm going to talk about the best episodes of Star Trek, and we'll finish there. So when I talk about the ideas, I'm talking about the morality and the philosophy and the ethics. And this is where it really, really helps humanity in general. So if you're watching Star Trek or the ORVILLE, please understand that there are lots of fantastical scientific ideas, but they are very, very much secondary. The first principle of Star Trek that it teaches morality and helps humanity grow, and that's hugely important in terms of what Star Trek brings us. So General Order 1 is called the Non-Interference Directive, and that's part of what they call their Prime Directive. And the Prime Directive is what happens is that they're flying along in their spaceship, and then they see a planet, and they find it's an M-class planet, which means it can sustain life for humanoid life. And then they find out if there are people or if it's empty. And if there are people, they want to find out whether or not they've got a certain level of technology. Now, this is not entirely accurate, because it doesn't follow that if you have the right, engines or plasma technology or dilithium, it doesn't mean that once you attain that you'll necessarily be moral, because there are many true stories where that doesn't happen. So I think, anyway, but that's what they do. They just say that if they don't have a certain level of consciousness, and they link technology with consciousness, and those things sometimes go hand in hand, but not always, that they won't get involved and they won't interfere whatsoever. Then there's also the ideas of cooperation. When what's her name was when the when this commander was lost, where the resources was very, very tight, they chose not to fight, with these pirates to steal people's stuff, and they chose to collectively come together as a group and cooperate. Then also the nature of personal freedom, where they're discussing with Commander Data about his rights, when he had works of art, or whether he could be called a person in his own right. So generally, the ideas of Star Trek in terms of moral and ethics is really, really positive, very, very helpful indeed. The problem where I have is where the science just goes completely out the window, and I'll talk a little bit about the science. So with the science, it kind of makes an inaccuracy that basically that if we want to travel, we've got combustion engines like petrol right now. We use petrol, crude oil. Refined, and then in Star Trek, that if you find a more powerful, reliable power source, and they use dilithium, which is a theoretical substance, that it can move the ship through a powered engine. Now, the real truth about what happens in the galaxy with higher advanced races of Sirians and Palladians is that they don't use a power source. What they do, as far as I know, is they use plates of magnetic rings that shift the gravitational field outside the ship, and they just work with turning on and off and manipulating gravity. So they don't have thrust engines. So the idea of an advanced engine that uses thrust is actually totally inaccurate in terms of real Palladian and Sirian truth. Now, this idea of beam me up, Scotty, of transporting, that's also theoretical. Some scientists have claimed that they moved a photon of light from one place to another, but the idea of disassembling all of your molecules and all of your atoms in your body and turning it into a just a phase, modulated or whatever frequency, and then sending that, and then reanimating or reanimating your molecules and cells, that's never going to be possible. And to my best of my knowledge, Sirians and Palladians in reality are, our guides, our angels that have been doing that for 15 billion years. They don't use teleportation, and it's never going to happen, never has. So it's inaccurate, it's wrong. The idea of time travel comes up quite a lot in Star Trek, and that's never going to happen, because if you study spiritual enlightenment, if you talk to a non-duality teacher or a spiritual enlightenment teacher, or anybody like myself who's experienced spiritual enlightenment, who understands the nature of space and time, you will know that space is an illusion, it's not real. Matter is even just illusory, it's not real in terms of quantum physics. And time is just a mental construct. And the idea of linear time that we have here on Earth, it's not real. So, I sure you could debate me on that and say, well, I think time is real, but actually it's not. So in terms of time travel, there is nowhere to go. And time travel will never exist, and it never has. In terms of the multiverse, they do lots of episodes in Star Trek and other different TV series like Fringe and other different things, where you've got versions of you in the multiverse that are doing different things. So there's another 20 trillion versions of Edward that is giving a different talk, or doing gardening, or doing something different on another multiple universe, and that's not true, and that's never going to happen. I have problems with my my brightness. I just turned my brightness up, sorry. If you can see me differently, that's because I changed my brightness. So the multiverse is not true, and there's no such thing as multiple versions of you somewhere else. And Doctor Strange in his latest movie, working in the multiverse and all of that, it's all fictional. It's nice to play around with these ideas, but it's never happened, and it's never going to happen because of the nature of physical space and time. And then the biggest problem that I have with Star Trek in general, in terms of it being a science ship of exploration, is that's also inaccurate, because the ships that truly exist, they would be more accurate to call them battleships, because the battles that have been raging between the Palladians with the Syrians against the reptilians, they're always fighting, so they're more like battleships, and you could say maybe they explore, but this idea of science ships, and also the problem with Star Trek is it's too military and too science-based, and also the idea of hierarchies, and also experience and growth and learning, because Syrians and Palladians do none of that. So one of the worst episodes was in Star Trek Discovery, when Michelle Yeoh, and against Commander Michael Bourne or Bean or whatever her name is. Anyway, they had this fight, and they're always saying "with all due respect." So my criteria for a failed Star Trek episode is I would take the number of times that they say "with all due respect," and if they said that 15 or 25 times in an episode, I'd just start saying, I'm out of here, Snagglepuss exit stage left. I can't be bothered. And so that's the biggest problem with Star Trek. There's too much basis in science, and all these little tricks like time travel or the multiverse, and they turn it into a science philosophy. But actually the whole idea about Star Trek really is it's moral and ethical, and helping people grow and become, grow in their humanity. So when people are talking about their military hierarchy and earning their right to become captain, or saying "with all due respect," or talking about time travel or multiverse or dilithium, all of that is just it's just an aside. It's an unimportant, it's when there's too much of that, it actually ruins Star Trek. So Star Trek should always be about morality and ethics, and it should always be giving a hint at Syrian and Palladians that are having galactic battles and trying to free Earth from tyranny of reptilian control, basically, because that's the ultimate truth. I'll take you through a little bit of the actual movies, because I talked about the TV series. There was Star Trek Generations, Star Trek Search for Spock. They're not in order, by the way. Star Trek Insurrection, Star Trek The Undiscovered Country, Star Trek The Voyage Home, where they time travel again and they free a pod of whales to save humanity with time travel, so it's very, very inaccurate. And then you had these Star Trek reboots, or sort of they're doing Star Trek canon again, and they're by different people, J.J. Abrams and all those guys. There was Star Trek Original, Star Trek Into Darkness, which is very, very good, Star Trek Beyond, which was not as good. So that's kind of where we are in the Star Trek movies. Now I want to talk a little bit about my best scenes or best episodes or best of. And some of the best episodes, like I mentioned, were The Traveller, where Wesley Crusher assisted a visitor through quantum physics and time travel, or to travel to different parts of the universe. Anything where they've had the character Kes, Kes, when she was engaging with the female captain, I totally forget her name, that's what my brain does. So where you see episodes where there's Kes, Kes, it's really, really wonderful. It's top-notch Star Trek. Anything, I would say for me the best captain would be Jean-Luc Picard, Patrick Stewart, and anytime he's having strong ethical debates with Commander Data, they're just golden moments in Star Trek. They're really, really good. For best actual actor, of giving actor quality, I would say Commander or Major Kira Nerys, Kira, Kira Nerys, on Deep Space Nine. Her acting, emotional acting. There's a beautiful scene where there's a planet where they're all fighting all the time, and they never fully die. And then she has some issues with self-hatred, and she talks to her spiritual teacher, and she gets lots of forgiveness around self-hatred, and it's just a real golden tear-jerking moment. with Major Kira Nerys, and it's just a real golden moment. I also wanted to mention that Star Trek, the original series, they did a remake, and it was called Star Trek Continues, with Vic Mignogna, or however you pronounce his name, and that was really golden, really beautiful, just absolutely wonderful. So if you want to go back to the original Star Trek series but get an upgrade with better acting and better moral and ethical debates and issues, and very emotional, try Star Trek Continues, which is a fan-based series that is even better than Star Trek the original series, in my opinion, although you can't really improve on Star Trek the original. So that's kind of my take on Star Trek. I'll talk a little bit about the ORVILLE again, because the ORVILLE is just majestic. I'd like people to pray that they sort their crap out and they make a season 4 or a season 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever, because the ORVILLE is just it's magnetic. It just draws you in. It's really, really good. Deals with lots of ethical debates. Now, I'm not going to be slamming the left and woke politics and say sometimes they go too far, because sometimes they do, but I think it's good to have a little bit of left-wing and woke politics in Star Trek, particularly in the ORVILLE, and they deal with transgender reassignment surgery, and they deal with other things which is generally actually quite enlightened and quite helpful. So it's such a lot to talk about Star Trek because it's so huge. I could kind of focus in any one particular areas. The main things I wanted to just elucidate back again now is that Star Trek is popular because it helps humanity with morals and ethics, and secondly, it alludes to the truth about our angels and our guides, Sirians and Pleiadians, and the history of them battling the reptilians. So it alludes to that truth. And then thirdly, it helps Starseeds, real Sirians and Pleiadians like myself and other people that I know here on Earth, get clues as to why we're here and what we're doing. And these TV series are basically hints at the original truth. So that's it, really. That's Star Trek and the ORVILLE, a Starseed perspective, wearing my T-shirt. I'll talk a little bit more, because I haven't talked too long today, but I'll just talk a little bit more and debate some of the more deeper issues. I think when they created the original Star Trek series, it was in the middle of the Cold War. And with problems with the Russians, obviously, in the Iron Curtain, and they kind of portrayed either the Klingons or either the Romulans as being similar to the Russians, and so it was topical at that time of while they brought those in. I think the Vulcans, who had no emotions, like Captain Spock, I think he was supposed to be similar, so I've got problems with too much light. I think he was supposed to be similar like the Asians, like the Buddhists, who preferred to avoid their emotions. This light is really weird. I wish I could make it there. I've changed colour. There you go. So Spock was all about having no emotions and having lots of logic. There isn't a race. Well, actually, there is actually a race. If there was a race that are non-emotional like Spock, they would actually be the Greys, or I don't know if the Greys and the Zeta Reticuli are kind of similar, but apparently they're non-emotional. Now, reptilians are non-emotional, but reptilians are also evil and dark. So the ones that Gene Roddenberry was trying to equate with the reptilians would actually be the Klingons. Now, the idea about humanity getting on buddy-buddy and having a healing or a truce or peacetime with the Klingons is actually not true, because that's never happened in real history. The Pleiadians and Sirians are still battling with the reptilians, and I don't think that war will ever be won, because unless you can genetically modify reptilians' brains and their heart chakra, that's never going to happen probably in the next billion years or so. So those peoples in the original Star Trek were hints at the truth, but also modelled on different races on Earth. and so they utilized the Klingons and the Romulans and the Vulcans to try and express how humanity was basically making peace with various Earth races. But the original truth is that the Klingons would be reptilians in space, and nothing to do with what's happening on Earth. So there was kind of like a parallel story or theme going on in Star Trek, and that's always been the case, in that Star Trek does allude to what's happening here on Earth politically, but it also alludes from the Starseed perspective that it's giving clues about the truth of various races like reptilians or the Greys, and Palladians and Sirians. When you look at Dinall, Dinall, in Season 3, Episode 3 in the Orville, where there's a blue alien, in my opinion, it's really, really transcendent and really, really beautiful. So if you listen to the speech, this loving, quiet speech that Dinall gives at about 4/5 through, or towards the end, towards Season 3, Episode 3 of the Orville, where you see this blue alien talking lovingly, that's about as Palladian as you can get. So I know that they've really kind of jumped on the idea of Captain Spock having no emotions, but there's no real parallel from a Starseed perspective. There is no superior race in the galaxy where they have no emotions like the Vulcans, even though I've got a V for Vulcan here. Joke, all jokes aside, but there is no highly evolved non-emotional race. Palladians and Sirians are fully emotionally expressive, creative, and in touch with their feelings, and there's no high race like the Vulcans. I think they were probably using the Vulcans just for a theme to learn about emotions and logic, possibly relating to the Chinese race, or Koreans or Japanese being more logical and less emotional, and I think that's possibly why Star Trek created Vulcans and Captain Spock. What else can I say about Star Trek? Yeah, there's a lot to it. I personally enjoyed Star Trek Deep Space Nine because it dealt more with lots of really, really important emotional issues. A lot of people can be annoyed by the traders, the ones that the ones that were very manipulative. I forget their name now; it's just going right out of my brain. Anyway, I think I'm running out of things to talk about. But yes, please pray that the executive teams behind the Orville sort their stuff out and create more seasons, because it's just great. So yes, that's enough. I was wanting to joke about this race, with the big ears. It's my brain, because I've been watching it all my life. I know exactly what they're called, but it's just escaped me. They've got huge ears, and they call them like Yankee traders, and they've got these principles about capitalism. It's really, really funny, but yeah, I won't go into that because it's just getting off topic. So I've run out of ideas, and my memory's going. I'm 59 years old. Apologies. I've got my Vulcan or my Star Trek shirt on, and I'm just having a little bit of fun. So excuse me. But sure, if you're a Sirian or a Palladian, you can't miss out on Star Trek. I will apologise for Enterprise, and I will apologise for Star Trek Discovery, because it's just terrible. Star Trek Discovery improved a little bit, but sometimes even bad Star Trek is even better to watch than nothing, so that's why I watched all of it. Strange New Worlds is pretty good. The Orville is by far better by far than even Star Trek. So I've said enough. I'm running out of ideas. Love you lots. Hope that inspires someone to get some ideas about Star Trek. What's very, very important that you do to understand, there are 3 layers when you watch anything on media or film. There's the basic level of entertainment. That's where they have fighting, kung fu and battles, or just general, excitement, entertainment, and that's level 1. And then level 2 is morality, which I said before about morality and ethics for here on Earth. And level 3 is another level of interpretation, a higher level of interpretation, only for starseeds, that alludes to Palladians and Sirians and what they're up to, which is our angels and our guides. So when you're watching it, if you're a very highly evolved soul, don't watch it at the lower level of just fighting and entertainment and, you know, pizzazz and wow, because that's not why it's being written. It's ultimately being written for humanity, for morality and ethics. And, you know, when casts are talking about science and dilithium crystals and saying with all due respect all the time and having these fights and all these little spats, that's just like so unimportant. It's just very, very low level. Try and get the higher level of interpretation when you see, like Denal, this blue Palladian angelic being giving words of comfort at a higher galactic level, because that's really why Star Trek and the Orville was created. Because I believe it's actually downloaded and channeled by our guides, and it's not only coming through the writers. Of all the people that I've looked at behind the scenes, I like Jeri Ryan. She feels like a starseed to me, so say your prayers that starseeds like Jeri Ryan still stay in Star Trek and create that level of influence, because that's a starseed level of influence that you want to keep going. When you get this crappy stuff that's been happening through Discovery, where they say all with all due respect, and they're just getting into woke politics and just going completely out on a limb doing crazy stuff, you just want to pray that they just stop doing that, because it's just bad, embarrassingly bad. So bye for now. I think I've said enough. Keep it happy, keep it light. Love you all. Kisses and hugs. Bye.